School of Environmental Sustainability. And our research was done through a pilot DEI climate survey that we administered to students within the SES community. So from prior research, universities have been more focused on compositional diversity, which is purely increasing the diversity of the student population based on the number of students from diverse backgrounds, which has been found to not really be enough to provide an inclusive environment that's conducive to the success of all students in a diverse and equitable campus environment. So to achieve inclusive excellence, there's a model that's needed where higher education leaders can consider how their campus environments meet the needs of highly diverse students instead of just increasing the amount of highly diverse students within their institutions. And with this increase in an equitable and more inclusive environment, this will lead to more academic excellence for all students that are then going to be entering into a diverse and intercultural society. So our research project specifically aims to understand the experiences of all undergraduate majors and graduate students with respect to diversity, equity, and inclusion within the School of Environmental Sustainability. To do this, our project analyzes how students' different perceptions of the diverse climate and their experiences with discrimination vary across their different social identities that make up who they are, from their gender, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, religion, political beliefs, and so on. From our research project, these results from the survey will then inform SES in its efforts to foster a more diverse, equitable, and inclusive learning environment where all students can thrive and feel included.
For our methodology, we first conducted a review of all the available literature on diversity climates and inclusive excellence in higher education. We then created a survey on the Qualtrics platform to be administered to all SES students, including a comprehensive questionnaire on identity questions, to which we can see in figure 1 on our data portion of the poster, and perceptions of the diversity climate, students' experiences of validation, belonging, inclusion, discrimination, and bias. We adapted survey items from the Higher Education Research Institute and from Loyola PhD student Mariah Johnson's report on discrimination at Loyola University. We piloted this survey with 13 SES student volunteers in January of 2021, and we performed a preliminary data analysis on the data that we collected from them, which we will explain in a moment. But we also used their feedback and the results to make the appropriate changes to the questionnaire in order to ensure that it's ready to be administered to the entire SES student population, hopefully later this year.
So now moving into the framework and results of our research, as you can see from figure 1, as I discussed earlier, part of the survey was focused on understanding students' social identities. And you can see these different social identities within this wheel. And these were our predictor variables that were asked about in the DEI climate survey. And figure 2, 3, and 4 are some of those predictor variables that you see based on the amount of students in each category within those different variables. So figure 2 shows the different race of pilot respondents. Figure 3 is the gender of pilot respondents, which you can see is about 75% women, which is about typical for Loyola and within SES. And then figure 4 shows the sexual orientation of pilot respondents. And throughout our research project, we decided to focus on these 3 different social identities to then apply those to the response variables and see how they interact with each other. So on the bottom left of the box, you can see the response variables that we decided to focus on. And for each response variable, we had different questions that students answered that all compiled into a score for that student. So the 4 response variables that we decided to focus on were co-curricular participation, so how often students participate in co-curricular activities within SES. The second is inclusion in curriculum, which is the number of classes that include a focus on diversity within SES. The third response variable that we decided to focus on was sense of belonging, so how students feel and if they feel included within SES or not. And then the fourth response variable we decided to focus on was general interpersonal validation, which is a measure of how students perceive faculty and staff's investment in their development and likelihood to succeed. So we then took students' predictor variables and social identities and compared those to their response variables to see how social identities affect students' experiences within the SES campus climate.
Table 1 shows on average how the 13 student participants who conducted the pilot scored for general interpersonal validation, sense of belonging, co-curricular participation, and inclusion curriculum in the curriculum. We then used R to statistically analyze the relationship between the predictor variables of race and ethnicity, gender, and sexual orientation, their relationship to these response variables. We conducted t-tests and Mann-Whitney U-tests in order to see where there were statistically significant differences. And we saw that there were only statistically significant differences with sense of belonging by race and ethnicity and co-curricular participation score by race and ethnicity as well. So gender and sexual orientation were not predictors for statistically significant differences in the distribution for any of the four response variables that we were analyzing. The box plots for the distribution for sense of belonging and co-curricular participation scores by race and ethnicity are displayed here on our poster. And what we can interpret from this is that the Mann-Whitney U tests performed showed that white European participants agreed to feeling a sense of belonging, and participants with other race and ethnic identities somewhat agreed or were neutral to feelings of sense of belonging. And then for co-curricular participation, what we can interpret from this is that white European participants somewhat participate in co-curricular activities, while participants with other race and ethnicity identities seldom participate in co-curricular activities.
So for the future of our project, we plan to administer this survey to the entire student body, including 394 undergraduate majors and 88 graduate students within the School of Environmental Sustainability. We will then analyze this data to produce more accurate and conclusive findings that represent the entire student body instead of just our small pilot survey amount. So then the results will be reported to the DEI committee that they can use to then inform their decisions and develop future steps to hopefully increase inclusivity and promote diversity within the School of Environmental Sustainability. For this project, we'd like to thank the Gannon Center for Women in Leadership, the Johnson Scholarship, and the Lou Ropp Social Justice Research Fellowship for sponsoring our research project. Thank you.